Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Rosie Day, and I'm Director at London Property Alliance, which is the joint name for City and Westminster Property Associations, the membership body for the property industry in central London. I'm really pleased to be partnering with NLA today on this webinar, which explores the role of digital communications and marketing in central London's property sector at the time of COVID-19. We'll be discussing how property companies are reaching their traditional audiences when everyone is isolated at home. We're discussing the lessons that can be learned from this ramping up of digital engagement to help promote London and its businesses when it's safe for workers and visitors to return to central London. We've got an absolutely brilliant expert panel to discuss those issues today. We have Karen Baines, who's Head of Group Marketing and Communications at Shaftesbury, which is obviously a major landlord and investor in London's West End. We have Benjamin O'Connor, who's Director at NLA and One City, and we'll explain more about One City, but in essence it's using social media to promote the City of London to a new generation of workers and visitors to the City of London. We have Leanne Tritton, who's the founder and managing director of the specialist PR and comms agency In Media. And last but absolutely not least, we have Rose Waggon-Jones, who's the Managing Director of Marketing at London Partners, which is the Mayor of London's promotional agency. So we're going to have a few presentations and then a panel discussion. We've also got plenty of time for audience Q&As, so really encourage viewers out there to think up some interesting questions and to submit them via Zoom. So I'm going to start by asking each of the panellists to give an overview of how their organisations are currently using social media to engage with their audiences, be it their customers, clients, tenants or visitors during this strange time of lockdown. I'm going to start with Karen, please.
Thanks, Rosie, and hi to everyone. Good morning. I will take you through Shaftesbury's digital communication in terms of what we are doing to keep our audiences engaged during this unprecedented and quite surreal situation that we have found ourselves in. Next slide, please, Molly. So Shaftesbury, as you all know, is a long-term investor within London's West End, and whilst we are working hard on the here and now, we absolutely have an eye on the future. We have three strategic pillars within our communications strategy: protect, promote and perform. The protect is around dealing with the immediate issues, and that's not just in terms of protecting Shaftesbury as an entity, but it's about protecting our communities, our tenants, our residents, our consumers, as well as our partners and our agencies. We work really collaboratively with our tenants to get through this unprecedented time. I'm sure, like all of us, we'll come through it battered and bruised, but the key is around being a long-term investor and helping us all to come through this. We have also created a community investment fund, of which the Shaftesbury board have waived 20% of their salary and pension to go towards a fund which is helping those that have been affected through COVID within our communities. And to date, we've actually donated almost just over 50,000 to help people through this. We've been lobbying government and councils to help London and the West End recover from this pandemic, and liaising and working collaboratively with our partners like London Partners, the councils, business improvement districts, as well as neighbouring property owners. In terms of promote, this is about building to recovery. This is about creating our virtual villages, which I shall come on to shortly, but it's about maintaining and growing the connection between consumers whilst we're in this lockdown, and basically helping them, live our lives through the digital media that we have as we've moved from physical through into the digital world. And then moving hopefully onto the performance pillar, which is around start of the phase of whatever this new normal will look like for all of us. Next slide, please, Molly. Thanks. So in terms of the promote phase, this is very much around harnessing what we already had in terms of our healthy and very loyal digital audience. but it's around harnessing it and adding additional value. You know, people are living their lives online. You know, we thought we lived our lives pretty much digitally before, but, you know, I think it's absolutely, this pandemic has absolutely, you know, accelerated the digital world. And the objective was to bring to life our virtually Chinatown, Carnaby, Soho and Seven Dials with a programme of digital content from our tenants to help educate, entertain, inspire people whilst they're unable to visit our villages in the physical presence. It is around creating the connections between the brands and the villages. Each of our villages, as you all know, have a very different personality, and it's really important to harness and protect those personalities. And it's about making sure that the village becomes part of the consumer's lockdown life and adding that additional value to them. Thanks, Molly. So we created the hashtag Virtual Villages campaign. As you all know, we refer to each of our areas as villages. So the whole concept of creating the virtual village obviously lent itself to it. So we have the Bringing Chinatown Home, we've got Seven Dials at Home, and we have Carnaby Together and Soho Together. It's very easy for social to become incredibly tactile, but the importance is to make sure that there is a strategic vision and putting things into context. We promote all of our activity through our various platforms, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn or YouTube. Specifically for Chinatown, we have 2 Chinese platforms, our Weibo and WeChat. All of these content we actually have been further promoting through PR, as well as making sure that they have been featured across our Shaftesbury corporate channels to obviously ensure that people are very fully aware that actually Shaftesbury are behind obviously all of our initiatives. Next slide, please. So measurement and results. Obviously, we have moved very much from a physical driving footfall and sales into the sentiment and engagement. And what we have found is that we are seeing a lot more reposting, resharing and saving of our posts, as well as user-generated content. The UGC, I feel, adds that extra layering in terms of the authenticity. Everybody wants to see that human element. I think now more than ever, we are seeing everybody and each of our colleagues and partners in a very, surreal, but in a personal side of things. It's almost that unpolished element that consumers are really craving to show, I guess, the normality of where we're currently at. Thanks, Molly. So in terms of our results, we're seeing record levels of engagement. For Chinatown, we're seeing the highest interaction of our posts during lockdown. We created a Chinatown is Waiting video for our Chinese platforms. This was a hugely emotive video, which actually showed scenes of Chinatown empty, but the ethos was very much around Chinatown is ready and is waiting for you. When it is safe to do so, we are ready for you to come back. In terms of Seven Dials, we saw an open rate of our newsletter. They're reaching around the 50% open rate, which is an industry standard. We're looking at around, the early 20%. So in terms of engagement, it's really making sure that we're getting the right content to ensure that we are having the engagement. For Carnaby, we've seen an increase on our Instagram channels of over 20%. And for Shaftesbury, in terms of the corporate side of things, we managed to secure 13 pieces of coverage for our Virtual Villages campaign. And we're seeing unprecedented engagement through LinkedIn and our Instagram feeds. Next slide. So where next? We need to be realistic. Once the green light is there, it's not around we're going to see people flooding in. It is absolutely about instilling confidence and reassurance. It's about seed corning, drip feeding the information through in terms of pre-opening, making sure that we are communicating everything that we are doing and that we are here and we're ready as and when the consumers choose to come back to our areas. Thank you.
Are we going straight on to me, Rosie?
Yes, we are. Thanks, Ben.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Rosie, for inviting me to speak. My name is Benjamin O'Connor, and as Rosie said, I am director at NLA and of the One City project. I'm going to take a slightly different approach because I'm aware that some of the people in the audience might not know about One City, so I'm going to do a really quick potted history of the project. Could I go on to my first slide, Molly, please? Okay, so One City is a digital platform that was launched back in 2016. It's a joint venture between the City Property Association, the City of London Corporation, and New London Architecture. The project came about after quite an in-depth analysis and survey of perceptions of the City of London that was done by Edelman and Smithfield back in 2015. And the survey looked at perceptions of the city versus the reality when it came to the city workforce and the types of occupiers. So the survey revealed that the majority of people at that time believed the average city worker to be a white male over 55 working in banking. They thought the gender split was around 80-20 male-female, and that the majority of businesses in the city were large corporations. And just overall that the city was an impenetrable glass and concrete cathedral to business. It was all about work. So the reality both back then and now is obviously quite different. Over 61% of the city workforce is aged 22 to 39. 40% are women, and over 99% of businesses are SMEs, and 80% of those are micro businesses with less than 10 employees. So why the discrepancy? We feel it's because there was no platform at that time celebrating the diversity of the city's offer. And this was largely due to the negative perceptions revealed in that survey. So it's kind of a cycle of misrepresentation of what is happening in the city. So One City was formed as an independent platform that could highlight and celebrate the breadth of the city's offer beyond a workplace. So the art, the culture, the nightlife, food and drink, and the world-class architecture and public space. We target the 22 to 39-year-old audience that was highlighted in that report, that often don't get to see the incredible things the city has to offer. So by changing their perceptions using digital comms and social, we can start to improve the overall image of the City of London. And as we know, talent drives occupiers and occupiers pay the rents. So we're currently supported by the city, the CPA, and 12 developers, architects, and agents who believe in the project. And we've got a number of different platforms that I'm going to run through quickly now. Just onto the next slide, Molly. So this is just a quick snap of some of the images that we share on our Instagram, and I'll go into more detail about our Instagram strategy and what we're trying to do on that in just a moment. Next slide, Molly. So these are the current platforms that we're operating. On Instagram, we've got over 40,000 followers, and this is our lead platform to share content. We support businesses and occupiers all over the city, and I'll say a little bit about what we've been doing during COVID later. We have a high engagement rate across all of our content on Instagram, and we use this as a place to celebrate everything the city has to offer. Around 50% of that content is now unique content generated by our quite small team. Our website has become a what's on guide for the best the city has to offer, from what cultural organisations are up to what is happening on developer sites and what events and activities the City Corporation has planned. We have a blog with regular updates, a newsletter for our followers and subscribers that comes out twice a month, one with highlights and another with key promotions and offers unique to the One City platform. Can we go to the next slide, please? So on Instagram. So these are the kind of things we're doing on Instagram. We obviously celebrate the built environment. It's what makes the City of London so unique. Nowhere else can you get Roman walls and medieval buildings next to that world-class architecture I just spoke about. Art, obviously not celebrated enough. You've got Culture Mile coming through, which is a critical project run by the City of London Corporation. So we're very keen to support that initiative. The activities and events that are happening both on smaller independent occupiers, but also the developers that we work with across all of their sites. And of course, the food and drink offer, which has really exploded over the last sort of 10 years, certainly since One New Change opened up. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So we've been experimenting with video content, both during lockdown and previously. So we found this to be a hugely engaging medium on Instagram. So you can check out some of our videos on our Instagram page by clicking the IGTV button. Our Instagram handle is OneCityLDN, all lowercase. Next slide, please. So this graph I debated throwing in. So this is actually looking at some sort of comparator sort of development sites, so areas or development areas in London. and just over the last sort of year, the success of the platform and the appetite for the content that we're putting out there. And as Karen was pointing out, what we have found is, if you can see that kind of spike at the end, in that kind of March to May period, we've seen our largest growth over the last 3 years. So over 3,000 followers were added in April alone, and our engagement rate has shot up. And that is also across our newsletter, our blog, website traffic, everything. So this is a really unique opportunity to capture that audience. And as Karen pointed to, we've got to make sure the content we're putting out there is relevant, and that it is supporting the occupiers and businesses in this really, really tough time. So next slide, please. So during COVID-19, we obviously had to shift what we were doing quite dramatically. We were all about encouraging people to go into the city to experience the amazing things the city has to offer. So like some other organizations like Time Out, who switched to Time In, our What's On turned to our What's Online. And we looked at the kind of things that the businesses and occupiers were offering online. So whether that was online fitness classes or deliveries or offering vouchers for their offer. So on our Instagram, we were looking at the sort of daily shots, establishing this sort of sense of nostalgia and looking back at the city, and having a moment to really appreciate what we loved about the city and trying to make sure that people have that really strong emotional connection to the city, and that they will want to return once all of this sort of rolls over. So we also have been posting weekly a What's Online guide to the weekend, and also one for the week, so people can keep up with their fitness routines, but also keep up with what their favourite businesses and occupiers are doing whilst they're on lockdown. So we do use Twitter. It's not our main platform, but we definitely use it to retweet and support occupiers across the City of London. And our blog has become a really critical way for us to share information on what things are happening during lockdown too. So I just want to go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a slide that I wanted to include that harks back to our original strategy. So since the beginning of the project, we have been thinking about what the real issue with workplaces in general, but obviously the stigma the City of London has. And it kind of boils down to this, and I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about now around COVID-19, is that this perception that the City of London is purely a place for business, it's purely this glass and concrete mecca, it's a workspace. We have to kind of shift that perception of these spaces as just business spaces and have people, create an emotional connection to these spaces. I'm just thinking back again to Karen's amazing presentation, looking at places like Seven Dials, which has that connection already, and that's something that definitely Shaftesbury will be, I'm sure, playing on. And I think that this, with COVID-19, you're expecting City of London announced some figures that only around 10 to 20% of the city workforce are going to be returning to their places of work in the next few months. So how can we support occupiers and retailers? And I think this is really the key, is creating a space that people want to come back to. We have to encourage people to come back, obviously, albeit safely. And in the case of the City of London, if they're not going to be in their offices, why would they come back? Well, that's where we hope platforms like One City can help. There's plenty of things that people can do and see in the City of London, and we have to encourage that as much as possible. And social is an incredible way to do that. Just onto the next slide, please. So I just wanted to finish by sharing how you can sort of get in touch with us. So One City LDN is our Instagram handle. Our website is onecity.london, and my email address is at the bottom there. We're obviously always looking for contributions to the platform, ideas. As I say, it's an independent platform. None of the developers currently have name recognition on the platform or branding, the City of London Corporation or the CPA. So the idea is to create this very independent feel that people can trust, and people will engage more with our content. Thank you, Rosie.
Hi, I think it's me. I go straight in, I believe. Hi, I'm Leanne Tritton. I'm the Managing Director and founder of Bing Media. We're a specialist PR agency in the built environment. And in our office today, we're Shoreditch, and we have 8 people in the office, which is just absolutely, and I feel almost emotional. Obviously, social distancing, all the right things that we've put in place. I think for me, what's been really, really interesting in terms of the digital sort of conversations over the last couple of months is, first of all, the C-suite. So I think everybody on this call, and perhaps some of the people watching, have been frustrated over the last couple of years, as digital has always been sort of the poor cousin of other forms of marketing. And, you know, I think a lot of the business leaders, the people who are running the major property companies, have seen social media as almost a nice thing to have. You know, it's, let's get a couple of girls in the office to go around, take photos of coffee cups, and then they send in a report. But most of them have never really engaged with what's going on. And certainly at the very, very beginning of lockdown, I was staggered by the number of sort of business leaders who were suddenly realizing what digital communications was about. It was like a revelation. So I think that's been a very good thing. I think from Ing's point of view, what we've tried to do is really raise the tone of the discussion and the debate, and have produced very, very high quality content. For the last 12 months, we've had a team working on mapping the digital footprint of cities around the world in relation to investment strategies. And we're continuing to do that. And there's a very strong correlation between cities who have a very, very strong digital voice and investment they're attracting. And that's going to get tougher and much more competitive. You know, what has happened to London and what has happened to worldwide cities is that the bar has been evened up a lot. There are a lot of cities, second-tier cities, whose health responses have been much better than London's, who are really in a much stronger position to sell themselves as not only tourist destinations, but as business destinations, and really attract talent and investment. And what I fear, and I'll be really interested, you know, sort of in the debate later on, is that London is sitting, we're resting on our laurels. You know, we're just assuming people will come back to London. Benjamin, you know, very rightly, you know, I think it's wonderful what One City are doing, talking about how do we attract people to come into the city if they're not coming into offices. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that people are going to get out of their houses on a weekend to make the trip into the City of London to see things. I think that, you know, getting people back into the city to sell the idea that we have state-of-the-art offices, we have state-of-the-art facilities. You know, I don't feel that there's enough of that happening across our sector to really sell what's happening. So again, you know, there was another bank yesterday making the decision to have people work from home till January. You know, that's a long time. There's all sorts of implications about that we can't sort of discuss today. Things like diversity, giving people opportunities, those sorts of things. But by and large, it's the businesses that support all of those banks and services. You know, the dry cleaners, the guys that got the sweet shop, you know, in the city, those sorts of people. And I feel a bit impassioned about this at the moment. You know, why are we letting these guys who are in country property make these decisions about our cities, and where is digital feedback? That's something we're very passionate about, and we want everyone called to start to talk about, you know, how is the shifting environment going to affect our cities, the restaurant owners, the, you know, nightlife. I mean, we're talking about selling as being very, very safe. Lovely, let's make sure it is safe. Of course, that's inherent. But one of the great things about London that attracts young people from all over the world is its chaos. You know, for me, when I first came to London, you know, it was the first time I saw crazy eccentrics, you know, go to Soho Square and see some mad people. It was wonderful. You know, I couldn't get that in the suburbs, and I couldn't get that from working from home. So what I hope we do is I hope we move very, very quickly beyond the hand sanitizer sort of narrative to the richness of London, the absolute richness. And this brings us on to sort of other forms, you know, TikTok, for example. Now, I got to admit here, I've got an account, but I would never post anything because I'm just far too embarrassed. But, you know, that is going to be a really, really important way of getting young people back into our cities. And, you know, Karen talked earlier about which thought was, I really want to have a look at that campaign. So how are we using new ways of getting people back into cities in a really exciting way? And who's doing the lobbying to the bosses, you know, the blokes in suits, and getting budgets that go beyond a, you know, nice Instagram campaign? You know, we've got to fight fire with fire here. And, you know, you look at political campaigns, they're spending millions online. And I'd like everybody, you know, I know you can't reveal this, but have a look at the budgets that you're spending and what you can do with that money to you know, really support these businesses. You know, let's get real about this. So the other thing is on budgets is making sure we get proper people, you know, real creatives to be creating these campaigns. And as I say, you know, we're still sending out, you know, 25-year-olds with iPhones to create content, you know, when we're up against businesses that have got, you know, film crews and creative ad departments and everybody else coming up with amazing campaigns. So my call today is, you know, let's get everybody on this call talking about how we get people back into cities, how we get creative, how we use digital communications, which is all of our platforms, to really do this. And let's march into the offices or the back rooms or country gardens of the blokes who've got the budgets, and, you know, let's get real about it. So that's sort of my overview.
Great, thank you, Leanne. And I do apologise, I'm having some IT difficulties here, but I will hand over to Rose now from London and Partners.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you, Leanne. Actually, I'm sure we'll come back to a lot of that conversation later. I feel like I'm now taking a little bit of a step back because you almost started the debate. But let me take a step back and then come back to that, because you raised some interesting points. But I think hopefully something of what I will share will bring some of the commonality of the things that we are doing together to build and collaborate, and then see how we can build on that. But anyway, just going back, I'm Rose Wangan-Jones. I'm the marketing director for, the managing director of marketing at London and Partners, and I'm delighted to be here. So let me tell you a little bit about LNP, because some of you may not be aware of it, even though I know that we have some partners on board, including Karen and Shaftesbury. And then I would like to do is outline a little bit of our business as usual, our approach to digital communications with a focus on social media. And then finally, we can come back to the real conversation, which is what we're doing now, and then open, I'm sure Rosie will be keen to open the questions and the debate. So Rosie, if you don't mind, the next slide, please. Thank you. So LNP is the International Trade, Investment and Promotional Agency for London. We're not for profit, and we're part funded by the mayor, but also part by London businesses. So people contribute to what it is that we do. Next chart. And our role is to create good growth for the city, growth that is inclusive, sustainable, and innovation-led. As Leanne mentioned, it is a very competitive environment. We have lots of things to do, and working together is probably the best way to get us to where we need to be. So we support businesses to scale in London. We attract and host major events in London, corporate events, trade shows, major consumer events. We're the leisure tourism agency for the city, and we run the official visitor channels and tourism marketing. And we work with London's higher educational institutions to attract international students. And I think what's important, and we've touched on this, is that we do this by growing London's brand and reputation around the world. That is what attracts people understanding what we are. And I think what's relevant to today is that for us, we rely very heavily on digital communications to do this, because they allow us to be very targeted with all the people that we need to address and engage with. And also it's a very cost-effective way of doing so. Next chart, please. So what digital channels do we use? We use websites, social media. We have our Visit London app, email marketing, and influencer marketing. Now, all of this we have used to either greater or lesser extent during our COVID response. And what I would like to do now is focus the approach on social media before I go into what we're doing now currently. Next chart. So this is an overview of the social media channels and audiences that we do use. I think a lot of these have been mentioned before, unsurprisingly: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also Karen mentioned Weibo and WeChat for our Chinese audiences. One of the best ways that we do maximize what we do is making sure that we have synergies across and repurpose content and messaging across all the different channels for different audiences. So that way we can also move quickly. One of the things about social media is the agility, and we need to be just as agile on our side. We prioritize, we're very data-driven, so we prioritize our messaging and our use of channels through data-driven insights, and also our business plan priorities. Next chart, please. So focusing first on consumers, our channels for consumers. Visit London is our consumer-facing and tourism brand. Now, our original flagship was the website, visitlondon.com, but over time, as we've discussed already, we have shifted more towards social media because that is where our target audiences spend most of their time online. And that is only continued to grow. I should say that for leisure, we focus on the younger target audiences, 18 to 34. And we also focus earlier in the customer journey before they're making the decision, when a constant flow of inspiration and positive messaging are key. And again, this is where social media comes to its own. I have to say that during lockdown, we are aware also of our international audiences, and we have, even though they're in a recovery curve on different times that we are, this is also the same strategy for them as well. What you see here is the number of followers in a lot of our social channels. It's very strong, just to give you a sense of scale. But again, as some of my colleagues have already mentioned, our specific KPI is engagements when we use social channels. Next slide, please. And then a quick focus on our B2B audience. And one of the things, we do several things, but I did want to highlight today our Good Newsroom, which is our WhatsApp community of senior business leaders who help us amplify London's positive stories as they happen. So we share news such as London businesses expanding overseas, similarly international businesses coming into London and expanding here, and major collaborations. These leaders in turn then share these stories and the facts throughout their own networks. This is again another great example of how we use social media to amplify our messaging. If this is something that anybody's interested in, of course, you can talk to me separately about it. So moving on to COVID, if we go to the next chart, please. Thank you. So we've taken a phased approach, basically reacting to what's happening on the ground on COVID. And we've organized ourselves in two phases. First, the resilience phase, and then the recovery, very much focusing right now on leisure audiences. In resilience, we're highlighting the moments and stories that show the city in a positive light, engaging those who love London and those potential future visitors. And this is mainly to support our London businesses during the lockdown and to make sure that we're highlighting London's resilience, again, about our brand and how we are dealing with this in a particular London way. In terms of recovery, which I'm sure we'll be talking more later, we're focusing our messaging around generating confidence and encouraging a responsible return to consumer spending, touching a little bit of what Leanne was talking about, and I think Ben as well, because confidence in getting back to our normal lives and our new normal are going to be so key. The next chart, please. So the way we approach this is very much making sure that our content streams are signed up at a senior level, and then we adjust with the latest insights. What this allows us to do is to empower our teams to get on with it, to make sure that they're building, creating, and sending out the content on a timely basis. Again, agility, which I mentioned earlier, is a key part of making sure that we're using the channels correctly. So these are our current work content streams that if you go to our social media channels right now, you will see. So just starting with Virtually London, this is what we would call a much more, I guess, traditional approach in the way that we approach our campaigns normally. And this includes callouts to partners, people like Shaftesbury and their virtual villages are part of this. We have campaign toolkits, and we have a modest media spend behind that. But basically showcases the best London is offering in terms of virtual tours and live streaming events. A lot of what people are doing now in lockdown and what they're looking for in terms of entertainment. For business audiences, we're doing things as well. We also provide information, support, and assets like webinars about best practice to put on their own virtual experiences. London from Home is very much a user-generated approach that, again, we've touched on, and is very community-driven, and it's about showcasing our lives during lockdown. What is our new reality as we are in our homes? And London Together is the current GLA campaign that is replacing London is Open. London Together actually includes a lot of safety messaging, but it also extends into positive human interest stories, which is the area that we have in common. I think this shows a really good example of when we look at London and also the wider international initiatives and seeing how we can support and collaborate with each other, because a lot of this is about building on what each other are doing. So those three things are very much part of our resilience phase. In terms of the recovery phase, we are focusing most of our efforts in what we're calling the Alliance campaign. I'll touch on that in a second, in which we are launching in mid-June. So next chart, please. So phase 2 recovery, again, the Alliance for London Consumer Recovery. So what is the Alliance? And the Alliance is bringing together businesses, brands, cultural institutions, and civil authorities in a collective response to the coronavirus. Our mission is to support the London's culture, retail, hospitality, and event sectors to thrive after the pandemic. As was mentioned before, this is key to what makes us London and what differentiates us with other cities. So supporting this sector is integral to who we are as a city and what attracts our talent. And we are planning on doing this via a campaign that builds confidence so that we can restore consumer spending. Next slide, please. So the objective of the campaign is to give Londoners the confidence that going out responsibly will be a great experience. The key messages that we'll be sending out will be about safety, will be about the new normal and how businesses are supporting those aspirations, will be about local spending as an act of solidarity and the right thing to do, being seen as doing the right thing, and of course about reinforcing the right behaviors around public health and travel. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because this whole campaign will be absolutely a digital first campaign. It's going to be hyper-local, and it's going to be created by Londoners for Londoners. We've touched on authenticity and user-generated content. That's going to be at the heart of what this campaign is about. So it'll be interesting to debate with Leanne about what, you know, the good thing about that authenticity and something that is more produced. I'm sure we'll come back to that later. But our social media channels will really play a key part in making sure that we're amplifying this message, but also about allowing Londoners to be part of it, interact with it, and make it their own and share their own stories. And then I think the last chart. And then basically all I just wanted to say, if you wanted to join the Alliance, and we can talk about that more later, but this is about, we will be making all these toolkits available to everybody, and these the messages can be amplified through your own channels, hopefully, and we would like to encourage your own businesses, influencers, and staff to use this and take this forward. And we're working with, I think, some of you already, and again, some of the people already on the panel as well. So that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Rose. Really interesting. I'm now going to move on to some questions for the panel, but just a reminder for the viewers out there that we really encourage questions as well through Zoom. So I'm going to go to Karen first, please, and it's specifically about the retail and hospitality sectors, which really are the lifeblood of central London, bring an awful lot of vibrancy. Those businesses have really been badly impacted by the lockdown. So I was just wondering what lessons Shaftesbury is learning from its current digital engagement, and how you can support your retail and hospitality tenants as they start to reopen.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, these are the sectors that absolutely, you know, I mean, like all sectors have absolutely been hit, but it's what we've touched on before, you know, we can't expect a dramatic pivot. We can't expect people, you know, green light and that's it, people are going to come back. What we really want to be doing, our objective is to make sure that we move into almost like an omni-channel. So, you know, we've worked really hard at, you know, gaining more followers, more engagement on the digital side, but we need to harness that when we hopefully move back into a physical phase, so that there are both, you know, both audiences. It is around instilling confidence that we've said before, but it's also about hope. And I think, you know, we're all such emotional creatures that it is that element of we all want that hope, you know, what's next? We're all talking about where's the first place that you're going to go to eat? Where's the place that you're going to meet up with friends? You know, what does that look like? And it's around helping our tenants, you know, make that work. So how is that? Is that around, you know, offering more space for them? Is it around, you know, working with councils in terms of relaxing licensing? Is it around being able to have more tables and chairs outside so that we can adhere to social distancing, road closures, widening pavements, all things like this that will help instill the confidence for people that want to and are able to come back when the time is right for them, as well as when the time is right for the tenants. You know, it's paramount that it's about safety, absolutely. But it is around that element, and you know, we touched on it before, and I think Benjamin, you mentioned it equally, is that it is around the connection. So, you know, for destination marketing, it isn't just around marketing the destination. You know, what is the cultural values for those destinations? What is that uniqueness that people have connected to? You know, and for us, it's very much been around, you know, I suppose there could be a cynical way. Of course, there's been more digital engagement. People have got more time. They're not on holiday. They're not commuting. But actually, you know, myself, my friends, colleagues, there's also been a lot of unsubscribing, you know, where you've actually thought, that's not working for me. I don't want to be hard pushed of a sales environment, you know, and I think, you know, live streaming has really helped e-commerce a lot more. You know, we've gone from perhaps a hard sales playground into a more marketing playground. And it is that element, you know, Leanne, you touched on it before, it's not about now resting on our laurels. We can't expect people to come back to our areas. You know, offices are probably going to be one of the last sectors to come back. How do we get people to come back through? And it is around being smart, working collaboratively, so that actually collectively, because we're all part of the puzzle, we're all part of that bigger picture that will help drive people through to instill confidence, that will actually get the culture and all the things that everyone loves about London back again. And I genuinely feel that London won't lose that, but it will take time. But we have to be bold, we've got to be brave, to enable people that reason to come back and come and enjoy the wonders of London that we all love about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Karen. I think, Leanne, did you want to follow up on that?
I just wanted to ask Karen and Rose and Benjamin, during this period, you've worked really hard to build audiences. Will you be doing sort of paid pushes of social content and digital, or are you just doing organic?
We're doing a bit of both, to be perfectly honest. There is, initially, we weren't doing paid. It seemed a bit, for us, it seemed too crass, I suppose, because it's that element of, you know, you want that authenticity, you want that genuine content. So for us, it was really important that it did come from the user-generated content, that it was that rawness. You know, our tenants were filming things live. You know, it's that element of, this is how you can make that favourite dish in your favourite restaurant at home with the rest, you know, with the chef. But, you know, we're sort of now moving into that next stage where it is appropriate to be using influence, the paid elements of it, but it has to be right for each of our villages, for each of our audiences, so it doesn't look or feel like a cold, hard selling fact.
I was going to say, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we have been using paid, but as Karen said, we will be moving more towards that. But it has to be, I mean, more than ever, you know, getting the message right has always been important, but I think it's more important than ever now. Having said that, I think we're all in violent agreement that we can't let it all just happen organically, that we're going to have, with the right messaging, we're going to have to start encouraging. And that's really what we're trying to do, making sure and investing behind that encouragement, so that people can feel safe, confident, reassured that this is the right thing to do, that they're going to be safe, but it is the right thing to do as well. So it's kind of pull-push a combination. Getting that right will be key, but it is going to be a combination.
And it's also that element of constantly reviewing sentiment and consumer behaviour, because, you know, we all know, I think we're all slightly expecting it's going to be one step forward, a few step backs, one step forward, just whilst people start to build that confidence. And I think it's, you know, absolutely paramount that, you know, my teams and the agencies that support them, they will be looking at absolute the detail and seeing what sentiment's changing, seeing what engagement's happening on through the behaviours, and talking to the tenants and talking to our partners and neighbouring property owners' bids and things like that. So we're working together, so we're really understanding what the consumer wants.
Just on the paid point, we've been doing paid promotions for 3 years. We do very little budget. We have a very small budget. It kind of goes back to the investment piece, but we have been doing paid promotions for some time. And I think there's absolutely a position for them now to support some of those businesses that we know are really, really struggling, particularly around their online offers. So I don't think there's a necessary problem with paid promotion. What I think it goes back to, I think all of us have mentioned, apart from me at this point, is there is typically an underinvestment in this area. And as you said, Leanne, it's sort of the poor cousin. It's not that anymore. This is going to be the primary way that we are reaching our audiences. And to be honest, I think it was before, but unfortunately the people who held the purse strings were not seeing that. And they need these kind of numbers and this kind of engagement and this kind of feedback to actually go, well, actually, maybe this is a smart thing for us to do. And that's certainly what we've been seeing with our partners and people we work with. They're starting to really see the value of having sort of digital platforms. And then just picking up on something you said, Karen, I'm in absolute agreement that we need to be encouraging people to go back and thinking about how we can sort of support that and what messaging we put out. But I think what this whole period has taught us is that we can do more than what we were doing before in terms of our outputs, in terms of the kind of content that we're providing. And all of us, whether it's an agency or a developer or organizations like NLA or One City, what we found is, we were very much geared towards physical events and physical meetings. But actually, we know there's other kinds of content. There's news pieces, there's interviews, there's blogs, there's animations and video content. There is all sorts of stuff that we can provide and we can support occupiers and our clients with, and create a much more dynamic and diverse suite of things that are out there for people to engage with. So I think it's going to be a real mix, because realistically, as much as we encourage people, a lot of people are not going to be going back into the city, into places. That it's just not going to happen quickly. So we have to support some of these digital initiatives we set up now, if that's going to be successful. So it's sort of, we've got to do a number of different things to over the next 6 months to support that.
I think, Benjamin, you're right. I think what's interesting about this is, as we now get, I don't know if I can actually say this, but get used to this environment, if there's ever such a thing. As we do that, and I think somebody mentioned, I can't remember who it was, this tacticalness that potentially in the approach to these type of channels. And I think we need to be a lot more strategic and a lot more disciplined, because otherwise, you're right, we need to have, improve the quality, maybe the quantity and the package itself. But we need to do so strategically, because there's a big I think risk of volume over quality, and I think we need to be good about that as well.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question for Rose and Benjamin, because we keep on talking about public confidence, and obviously there's been a huge dint in public confidence in visiting central London. As the lockdown is eased, what role do you see social media playing in encouraging people to come back and to appeal to them? So shall I start with Rose on that question?
I think, again, is going to be key in terms of getting our messaging out. That's where people are looking for information. That's where people are looking for not just entertainment, but again, this information and these facts. So from our perspective, it's not just saying what it is that we're going to say, but which channels we're going to do it in. The way I think we're thinking about it, and again, it will be interesting to get everybody else's point of view, is very much, because we're looking at something that's hyper local, we are thinking very much of a Londoner approach. And that is why we think authenticity is going to be a key part of this, keeping it really real. UGC, user-generated content is part of that. So that's kind of the way we're seeing it, but it's going to play an integral place in getting that message out, because we are going to, like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a bit of that, push and pull, and we need to encourage people with the right messaging at the right time. And I think those channels are going to be integral in reaching those audiences.
Great, thank you. And do you have a view?
Sure, yeah. I think I think London is really well positioned to deal with this crisis and this recovery. And it kind of goes back to some of the images I was showing in my presentation. There really is nowhere else like London. Nowhere else that really even comes close. And the City of London is so unique because you have this incredible financial centre with these incredible glass buildings next to the historic heart of London. Nowhere else has that. So I think it's going to be about supporting that messaging around London's, London is unique. There isn't going to be another city that can offer what London can offer. And by supporting that kind of wider kind of message, harking back to that kind of nostalgia and the emotional stuff I was talking about before, is really going to support people's confidence and desire to want to go back in and visit their favourite places. And in turn, that's going to support the retailers and the businesses. So it's kind of just, I think, going back to that point about harking on about the appeal of London and why people should be going out and seeing these places. So I think it's possible, but just going back to my previous point, I think it's possible, but in the context of supporting all the digital stuff as well. I think that's going to be the really, really key thing, is supporting the kind of new world that we're living in now.
Great, thank you, Ben. I'm conscious of time, so I think I'm going to move on to some audience questions. I've got a great question here. So based on what Leanne said about capturing the really weird and wonderful parts of London, how do you think that can be done in the digital environment? Would anyone like to comment?
For me, I'd say, sorry, Leanne, do you want to go first?
No, you go.
I was going to say, for me, I think, I mentioned video content. I think really short, snappy, kind of engaging video content, animations. London has a huge amount of character, and it's largely around the built environment, and we can celebrate that. So I think really that to me is the most engaging kind of content that we can be putting out there. But there are a number of other ways that we can do that. Leanne?
I think, and this is a really interesting point, because as I said at the beginning, I think unfortunately our industry is quite conservative, very conservative in its views, and everybody, generally there's a lot of control wanted. That's why people get nervous about, that's why there haven't been a lot of sort of chief executives talking. If you look at the airline industry, for example, most of the leaders have been very, very active in media and social media about defending their industries. And we haven't seen that same vocal voice as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's because our industry is quite conservative. So I would recommend that people loosen themselves up a little bit, go with the flow a bit more, celebrate what is different. Don't try and make sure that everything is sort of perfect in terms of social media. And that's hard. I think if you're running these campaigns, you're always at the behest of people, worried about what goes out, and rightly so. Messaging is very key. But just, I think we've got to relax a bit more, and relax a little bit more into the it's horses for courses. As I said before, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, they're all very, very different platforms. So, train your bosses to learn how to relax a little bit into each of those platforms.
Yeah, Carol, you got any views? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that it's what we were touching on before. It's about the balance, isn't it? We have demonstrated, as have numerous brands around the world, it's the unpolished elements of it. It is that element of, I think it was Zara that got their models to do the photo shoots themselves in their own homes with no makeup on, seeing them in their lounge, like L'Oreal with Eva. It's almost like she's doing her home dive, doing her grey roots. Could you ever believe that would happen before? It's not, because we live in a polished world and everything is so perfect, and we're all so, yeah, everything's fine. But it is that element of, we've now shifted and we've moved into showing the human side of things. But there has to be the balance, because there will be elements, without losing the messaging and the tone. But there has to be the balance, I think, between what is right to be polished and what is right to be seen as the rawness of all of the areas of London.
Yeah, I love the Zara photo where she's posing against her oven. It's great. Rose, anything to say? Otherwise, I'll. No, fab. All right, we've got a very, very topical question here, asking about how diversity and inclusion can be brought into these campaigns, particularly in light of the recent Black Lives Matter protests. The protesters, it's a young demographic, particularly young demographic, actually, that we want to be reaching out to. So I was just wondering if anyone would like to comment on that.
I can say a bit about this. So we obviously at NLA have a number of different brands, and Blackout Tuesday, a couple of days ago now, it was an amazing concept. But what we found very early on in the day, you'll see that some key industry people were posting, and they were getting slated online for posting without having any message or backup or any sense of how they're helping in this area. And so it's a really delicate thing to do, to not come across as didactic about something that we as an industry categorically have failed at getting involved in. And there are initiatives that we're all thinking about and working on, but you just look at, the diversity on panels, you look at the diversity in people's leadership teams, you look at, and we at NLA have that as well. We want to support diversity. We have our Next Gen and our Diverse Leaders Network, and we're looking at things that we can do. But I think before we start doing things on social media, we have to fix things internally in our organizations. Otherwise, we have absolutely no place or platform to be saying anything in this issue. Support, yes, but accept it when people say, what place do you have if you're not working hard on this? So just one quick thing I wanted to share is my background is working with the heritage sector, and I'm looking after museums and galleries. And there was a program run by the Heritage Lottery Fund called Strengthening Our Common Life, which is about getting BAME young people positions in museums, which is incredibly white. And the idea was you would train up people in the heritage sector, and they would become the future leaders. I think there's absolutely a place for the built environment to have this sort of traineeship, and it's something that we're looking at NLA and LFA as something potentially we can help support. But for me, I think it's a very dangerous place to start wading in on social media campaigns. There's this whole issue around virtue signaling and businesses seeming like they're doing something when actually they're doing very little.
Yeah, can I just sort of add to that? I completely agree, And I think one of the frustrations, at ING, we also don't have enough diversity, and we have actually tried over 20 years to work with different groups, creative access, that sort of thing. And I actually talked about this right at the beginning of lockdown. And one of the things that worries me a lot about the working from home statements, long term, I'm not talking about the next couple of weeks, I'm talking about very long term, is our industry is, my inbox is always filled with contacts of people who are well connected, who say, my daughter or my friend or whatever needs an internship this year. Can you help out? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we have to work really, really hard to get out of our comfort zones and go and find people who, may fail. They may not be great interns, but they'll get 5 or 6 people in their network, and then they will, build networks. And I feel very strongly that, by these organizations who are I have no idea, if you don't have a network, how you're going to manage to, bump into the boss or someone of positions of power while you're just working from home. I think that's a very serious consideration for all industries, frankly.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to wrap up now and just say a massive thank you to our incredible panel. So thank you, Karen, Benjamin, Leanne and Rose. Thank you to NLA for partnering with London Property Alliance on this webinar, and I really hope everyone has enjoyed it and found it interesting. So have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.